The numbers I've been seeing about the survival of independent bookstores are bleak. I think there's about 27% of the bookstores now that there were 10 years ago.
The old economic model of bookselling has changed. It's broken. The economic model that Kepler's currently rests on is broken and can't be fixed.
Because we think we're starting a journey, and this is going to be a long-term process. The process of reinventing what a bookstore is, how it works, how it relates to its community, how it delivers literary value, and there are a lot of very fundamental questions we need to ask and change the answers to.
My dad started the bookstore in 1955. The old bookstore was just amazing to go into. It was a converted warehouse. It was concrete floors with posters on the walls and ceilings. I mean, I've often described it as sort of a giant hippie's bedroom, if you have any clue as to what that sort of looked like from the 60s. What we've been seeing for a number of years again, especially since the 2008 when the economy collapses, a slow decline, and sometimes not so slow, of our book sales. As we've been working to make changes in the past year, in August, I really recognized that we were not going to be able to sustain the business, and we were looking at closing as an option. Almost on a lark, I got wind that Praveen Madan was interested in buying Kepler's, or had been at some point. So I picked up the phone and called him and basically said, I'd like to have a conversation with you in confidence.
When I was growing up in India in the 70s, we didn't have as much access to books, and I just felt that as a child, when I was trying to open my mind to the world and really understand what the world was all about and my place in it, I was turning to books again and again. When I came to States 20 years ago, I found these big bookstores, and I was like, wow, these are wonderful. You can sit all day in a Barnes & Noble, and I was in heaven. And then when I lived in Menlo Park, my wife and I were dating at the time, and we came here for many dates. we would come down to Cafe Baroni and get a bite to eat, and then browse the shelves at Kepler's for hours, and pick out books that we both had read and liked, and we would compare notes about the books. So I just had a very fond place in my heart, for the store. A few weeks before Christmas last year, they called me, and their plan was to liquidate the store. They were getting ready to, kind of get through Christmas, and early January they were going to start a liquidation sale and shut down the store in about 30 days after that. And when I heard that, I was horrified. I basically asked, Clark Kepler for, permission to, talk to a few people on his staff and in the community and see if, we could come up with a plan that would really not just save Kepler's, but really make it sustainable. People have been telling Clark Kepler for years to make Kepler's a non-profit, and they were telling him, if you make Kepler's a non-profit, we can give you more money, we can support you more, because then it's tax deductible. So basically what we're doing is, we're transitioning Kepler's into a hybrid business model, where part of the company is going to be a for-profit, community-owned, community-operated bookstore, and part of it is going to be a non-profit organization that's going to, further public education through literary arts and performances and author interviews and, things like that.
When I closed the business in 2005, because our revenue was down, I mean, our customers were less loyal, were shopping online, but the community came together when we reopened to help us reopen by funding the business, by becoming members of our literary circles, spending money essentially the way they would with a public radio. It did work in terms of saving Kepler's, and it did sustain for a period of time. Over time, though, and especially in 2008 when the economy went broke again, people go back to their old habits. Some people will remain passionate about supporting those things that they love and want to keep. Others start to think a little bit more like a consumer and think of it's really convenient for me to click this button, or it's really convenient for me to find the cheapest price I possibly can for this book. And I always felt that the bookstore was a part of the family. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, and my dad asked me to come to work for him for first, I think, over the summer, and then for a year to help him with the business. And during that time, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's and realized that he was going to have to make a transition of the business. And he had asked my older sister if she was interested, and she wasn't at that point in her life. And he asked me. I also said, I want to go on with my own life. And so he tried to sell the business for some time, for many months, and really didn't get the sort of offers that we felt like were appropriate for the business. And he was getting sicker. And one day it became clear that Dad was going to have to take an offer to sell the business that wasn't really what he needed and wanted from it. And I was sitting there in silence and sort of realized that I was making this choice to go out and abstractly save the world, or more concretely stay and save my parents' business and sort of a family member in that sense. And so at that moment I realized that the right path for me was to commit to the bookstore and to learn more about it.
My wife and I moved into a little house in College Park, Maryland, our first home together. I'd wanted to audition for Homicide: Life on the Street because it was a good television show and it was filmed in Baltimore, only 30 minutes from our house. It was, in fact, the only local show at the time, and it was probably the only chance I had at a significant role.
It's because of independent booksellers that a lot of people have gotten their start. A lot of, unknown authors have turned into best-selling authors.
The whole internet experience achieves a lot of what the bookstore does in terms of ideas and information, but it doesn't engage with humans, and it doesn't expose you even necessarily to people with a differing opinion. If you want to just listen to your own crowd on the internet, you can do that.
A lot of my friends read their books, electronically, and I don't do that. I like to have the physical book in my hand. I like to feel the book. So I'm old school, old-fashioned in that sense. Obviously, the wave of the future is going to the electronic books, but I still like to have a book.